What's up, everybody? It's Austin. It's Friday. If you've watched this channel, you know that I own Rocket Lab stock. You know that they just reported earnings, and we're going to cover their earnings in my response. If you're new to this channel, I have over $10,000 invested in Rocket Lab stock. It's very high risk and very high reward, potentially. So I don't want anybody to just blindly follow me. I'm not recommending it to anybody. I am talking about openly my approach to investing in this very high risk company and my response and how I think about their earnings and the company as a part of my overall investment portfolio. So I'm going to share my portfolio with you. I'm going to share my response to their earnings. And I'm also going to share my secret high productivity breakfast hack. Okay, here you go. If you are new here, this is my public portfolio that I share. I'm building it from $10,000 to $1 million in 10 years. We started at 10,000 on February 15th. I am adding money over time. It's now at 94,600. We are up 8,200. So we have put 86,400 in. The market's going to open here in 3 minutes. So I'll actually jump back over to the portfolio so you can see it when it opens. And we'll also see the Rocket Lab response and what the stock does after the market opens. If we jump over here, it looks like this is the first time I looked at it. It looks like the stock's up 5%, which is kind of what I was thinking, but this stock can do anything. It's very low volume of shares, which is something to pay attention to. That's one reason this is a high risk, high volatile stock, high volatility stock. When there's not a lot of shares traded, the stock can potentially be manipulated by one or two big buyers, okay? But I'm not adjusting my position. I'm not selling. I intend to hold these shares for 10 years, and I've invested an amount that I'm comfortable just leaving in the stock, and I don't need to sell it. Even if this thing went to zero, that could potentially happen, I probably am not going to sell my shares, at least over the short term, because the way I'm thinking about this is I am invested for a 5 to 10 year time horizon, because that's the opportunity I think I see in the space industry that they are serving, and I think they are a leader in that industry. And with that is going to come a lot of volatility in the stock price, both to the upside and to the downside. So one quarter where they miss a little bit, the stock could drop 50% or more. That's the type of company that this is. And one quarter where they do a good job, the stock, it could go to the upside a lot. It's just going to be very volatile. And right now, it's an $11,000 position in the portfolio. I said I put $10,000 in, I did, and it's up 1,500. It's one of the largest positions, right? But I've shared this publicly. I'm adding at least $3,000 a month, or trying to, over 10 years, which means in total, I will add $370,000 to the portfolio because it started with $10,000. And so when you think about a $10,000 investment as a percentage of $370,000, that's like 3 to 5%. Or something like that. That's how I'm thinking about Rocket Lab. I wanted to get the money invested ahead of time because I just want to leave it, have it in there, and let it do what it's going to do for the next 5 to 10 years, okay? And now I'm focused on adding to other companies. That's my approach to Rocket Lab, right? And see, look at that. So I just talked about how the stock's volatile, right? It was up 5% pre-market. Market just opened. The stock is now flat. And that's exactly what's going to happen. If you look after earnings, it dropped 8%. I wouldn't be surprised if the stock is anywhere from down 15% today to up 20% today. Neither of those scenarios, or somewhere in between, would be surprising to me. The most surprising thing actually would be if the stock stays like 1% up or 1% down. That, I think, is the most unlikely scenario today, and I don't do daily guesses. In my opinion though, the most unlikely thing that happens today is the stock is relatively flat within 1% of down or up. The most likely thing is I'm gonna guess, is a 10% move one way or the other. Have no idea which way, and I'm not gonna do anything with the stock either way, because I invest based off of market opportunity, leadership. The company has to have a good product or service, which is indicated by revenue, growth, margins, things like that. And then I will take occasional risks, which Rocket Lab, again, very high risk on speculative companies that have a lot of potential upside. And that is where I bucket Rocket Lab because of the space industry. So let's talk about it. Bank of America, actually, so I wanted to share this, just came out saying that it is a top SMID, so small and mid cap pick at Bank of America. They said it set a price objective of $12 based on a long-term discounted cash flow of the base, bull, and bear cases for different revenue and cash generation scenarios between now and 2035. So long-term, very long-term horizon, and that's how I think about it. And look, if you look at the stock over here, it says it's down 2%. So not surprised at all, and that's actually a tame response to a stock like Rocket Lab. Our DCF factors in a 13% discount rate and assigns 33% probability to base case, 33 to bull case, and 33 probability to the bear case. They employ a lower discount relative to peers to account for the company's more mature launch capabilities, because they are actually a proven launch provider. We'll get into some of that. B of A said the equal weighting fairly reflects current investor risk appetite, momentum for new technology space stocks, and the perceived viability of Rocket Lab's business model compared to peers. Even with the cautious modeling, the price objective of B of A reps about 105% upside from Thursday's closing price. So they were up 1.8% pre-market, like this is saying. Now they're down 4%. So there we go. We're getting closer to where I think the stock is going to end up or down 10%. Who knows? Okay, let's talk about the results, right? And this is why I'm happy with the results, regardless of what the stock does today. It's impossible to predict daily price moves. That's my opinion. Q2 GAAP earnings per share of -8 cents, which missed by 2 cents. I'm not at all concerned with that because of the stage they're at in their business model and their investments and how things fluctuate over time. What I'm more concerned with is, do they hit their revenue targets? And they did. They actually beat their revenue targets. Revenue was up 391% year over year, which is a little bit less impressive than it sounds, because in the prior year, they had some constraints due to COVID and launch capacity being shut down and stuff like that. But still, beat expectations by 6.2 million, which is a 10, 11%, maybe 12% beat of what expectations were. And they actually provided Q3 outlook that was above analyst expectations. So all good news. Revenue between 60 and 63 million versus consensus of 54. Launch services revenue of 23 million. So that's actually like launching rockets and stuff. Space systems revenue between 37 and 40, and we love to see this. So I like to see that they have diversified revenue, not just launches, but also space systems. We're going to jump over. This is their press release. This is a quote from the CEO, I believe. In the second quarter of 2002, our team upheld our track record of relentless execution, delivering 3 successful launches, more than any other small launch provider for the entire year so far. We continue to push the boundaries with our launch and spacecraft technology, a strategy that also saw us successfully launch the Capstone Mission to the moon for NASA. The highly complex 2-phase mission encompassed a flawless launch on Electron and successful deployment to ballistic lunar transfer orbit by our in-house designed and built lunar Photon spacecraft, paving the way for future deep space missions to Mars and Venus. And this is why I'm excited about this company. This was a huge mission to be successful. NASA is planning on doing more missions like this. So if they've had a successful launch in the past, it makes sense they would go back to Rocket Lab for future missions. It's also a big name and a high profile mission to be executed flawlessly. And so that over time brings credibility and draws more business. We are encouraged by the broad-based momentum that continued across our space systems business, which encompasses 66% of revenue in the second quarter. Space systems continues to be a significant growth area, with construction of our satellite constellation production facility in Long Beach substantially complete. This production facility will support the manufacturing of contracted spacecraft builds and backlog for a range of customers, including Varda Space Industries, ETA Space, University of California, Berkeley, 17 500-kilogram spacecraft buses for Globalstar as part of a $143 million subcontract awarded to Rocket Lab by MDA. So then here's an update since actually the quarter ended. So this is actually going into next quarter. Launched 2 successful back-to-back missions for the National Reconnaissance Office in just over 3 weeks, demonstrating responsive launch for the national security community. So this is big because in general, space launches are far planned out. Rocket launches are far planned out. This was a kind of a responsive mission. So introduced the company's responsive space program to enable rapid call-up launches and spacecraft capabilities. So if there's a time-sensitive mission or something gets canceled and they need to fill the spot, then they have these response missions that they can then fit into these slots that could help even out revenue, could help grow revenue and have more launches in the future, which is a pretty cool function to be able to do. And those are also higher margin launches, or more expensive because of the nature of the responsiveness. Okay, last thing I want to do is jump into the investor update. They provide a lot of slides, and so I'm just going to highlight some of the key ones. Before we get into this, I told you about this breakfast hack. It's not really a hack. You're going to be super disappointed. The hack is that this morning I only got to eat the crust off the bread from my kids' peanut butter and jelly that they didn't want. That's how I increased my productivity, because I was just trying to get them out the door and I didn't have time to make myself a breakfast. Not a recommendation. I'm not a doctor. Seek your doctor for any medical advice or any of that stuff. And I don't like to do that, but I thought it was kind of funny. And I'd imagine there's a lot of parents out there that do the same thing. You're rushing to get your kids out the door ready, your family ready, and don't have time to take care of yourself. So a reminder, find time to take care of yourself. It's a reminder to me. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. All right, let's talk about this Capstone mission a lot, right? There's space nerds that are going to comment and tell me I have no idea what I'm talking about. You're right, I really don't. I'm not that much of a space nerd, trying to learn more, but I do have an appreciation for this company and what they're doing and the capabilities that come with space, right? And this is everything from the extreme is the Elon Musk colonizing Mars, right? But the reality is that a lot of our functions in society, GPS, clocks, a lot of different things come from capabilities that we have from having satellites in space. So it's a big deal, and a lot of the global economy relies on it. That's the bottom line. Anyways, Capstone mission for NASA, the Cislunar Autonomous Positioning System Technology Operations and Navigation Experiment, Capstone for short, is the first spacecraft to test the near rectilinear halo orbit, NRHO, around the moon. That's why we have acronyms. This is the same orbit intended for NASA's Gateway, a moon orbiting space station for astronauts. Again, that is the bigger picture right there. Capstone is the first step in humanity's return to the moon. For Rocket Lab, this was more than just providing the launch. They did a moon rocket, a moon engine, and a moon spacecraft, all designed, built, and operated by Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab is the only small launch provider to have designed, built, launched, and operate its own satellites in orbit, further expanding our total addressable market. Okay, and this is a lot of science stuff. The biggest thing is that it was clearly complicated, right? 6 days of 24/7 spacecraft operations, which is pretty impressive. They launched. The orbit was kind of crazy. They had to circle the Earth like 3 times to eventually get on, maybe it was more than 3 times, I don't know. There's more than 3 circles here, so maybe it was 6 times, to eventually get on the right trajectory to hit the moon using the amount of fuel, because they have to keep fuel low. They've got to have enough propulsion. They've got to be at the right angle. You can tell that I'm a rocket scientist. I'm not. I have a criminal justice degree. But anyways, it was a very complicated mission, and it was successful, obviously. And now, this lunar Photon engine that they have is 1.3 million kilometers from Earth. So it did its little mission, dropped the satellite off in the right place for the moon, and now it's just on a nice solar system tour. Thing I want to point out on this slide, right? A lot of words. For the furthest mission so far and the most complex mission, it was also Electron's heaviest lift to date. This tells me that they are advancing their capabilities in research and development so much with every launch, which is great for the future. Okay, and let's talk about this NRO mission a little bit and kind of that responsive mission, right? So they had back-to-back national security missions launched from separate pads 3 weeks apart. Huge deal. That's a faster cadence than normal. Successfully demonstrated responsive space in action. They have now launched 4 NRO missions to orbit on Electron, reliably serving the national security and intelligence community. That's big for future government contracts. This is why this is important. The proven rapid and reliable launch. They successfully launched those missions for the National Reconnaissance Office from 2 separate launch pads just 15 days apart. Part of the model, or the way that this business model works, is the capacity and the ability to launch, to do more launches throughout the year. If they can get these down to 15 days apart, or even less somehow, then they can launch more missions throughout the year, which increases the amount of revenue with the same amount of launch pads. That's how they increase margins over time. The only small launch provider to demonstrate its sought-after capability, increasing demand for national security community. This is kind of crazy. I've not validated if this is true or not, but what they're saying here is that they have the fastest turnaround between successful launches of any small launch provider. They're in first place with 15 days. Second place is there another competitor that's 115 days apart, and third is 164. A couple yellow flags at this point, right? And these are things that we do need to watch over time, but again, this is gonna take a long time to play out, but we wanna see these improve over time. We can see over here, GAAP and non-GAAP gross margin trended slightly lower from the first quarter. So you're looking at the first quarter on the left, second quarter on the right, driven by a mix shift to lower margin launch services revenue. So more launches, more of their revenue was from launch services than in Q1. That's a lower margin business than space systems, that other category that we talked about. This is the other thing that we have to monitor. Q2 2022 ending backlog, that's people in line with that have put a little bit down or shown demand for a launch in the future and plan to spend on launches in the future, of 531 million decreased 14.5 million from the prior quarter, ending the balance as we recognize record revenue from the quarter. So if the backlog continues to trend down, that means they're not generating enough new interest and new orders for the future, or people are canceling, maybe moving to competitors, something like that, or there's just less interest, right? That's what that could indicate. Or it's because they're able to launch more launches in each quarter than what they previously had, and so they're burning through that backlog faster. Backlog is a tricky thing. It's like Tesla with pre-orders, right? You don't want it to get too long because then customers are unhappy and they start to cancel. But you also need to keep a strong backlog that gives you enough reliability and security in your future revenue, and you still have demand for your services. So you've got to find that balance of not having too small of a backlog where you're lacking demand and potentially at risk as a business, but also not having a backlog that keeps growing and gets longer and longer and longer and people are unhappy, because then you lose business anyway. So you got to find that happy medium, and we're still in the process of figuring out where that is for Rocket Lab. Let me know if you liked my breakfast tip. Let me know what you think about Rocket Lab. Do you own it? Do you have other stocks that you want me to cover? And what other videos you want me to do? Let me know in the comments. I love to do subscriber requests.